Caren, I'm excited to continue our conversation now and hear your journey. As a tech leader, I'm sure there's been the highs and lows. To begin, tell me your story. Like, how did you get to where you are today?
Oh gosh, the peaks and valleys, the roller coaster of entrepreneurship. Yeah, so it's been a wild ride. I've loved every second of it, even the lows. When you recognize them for what they are and know that the high will follow. It's been a journey for sure. I got into this industry, and it's interesting because when I think about prop tech, that word didn't even exist when we started building our software. But I was a frustrated apartment hunter, right? So like I had experienced the pain of moving again and again and again, and I was insanely frustrated by it. And I felt like there had to be a better way, right? You hear entrepreneurs talk about that all the time. There has to be a better way. I felt that, and I very much wanted to scratch my own itch because I felt this pain, and I also had this, I don't know, just this deep curiosity and interest in real estate. Whenever a friend would say that they were looking for a new apartment, I was that weirdo that would raise her hand and say, I'll help you. And people would be like, why? This process sucks. But I was just so intrigued by it and fascinated by it. So that's how I initially started, but again, did not have real estate experience. I didn't even really have tech experience. I didn't have tech experience. My co-founder did, which is why I felt like we would be a great fit. So he started building the tech, and I kind of did everything else initially.
Your background was definitely in marketing and sales. And so
It
that's
was.
what you knew well. And then
I'm
it's,
probably selling myself short. It wasn't like I didn't know how to do anything. Yes, my background was in marketing and sales, but it certainly wasn't in real estate.
so a lot of learning. So to get that initial beginning part, finding maybe your CTO, your co-founder, talk to me like, what did it take to get the initial funding and kind of get off the ground and get started? Any tactics that you used that maybe another entrepreneur can learn from?
For sure. Yeah. So I'll caveat this by saying we did have what I believe was a big leg up because Mike and I, we were part of an accelerator program called Techstars, which many folks might be aware of. They were making their way from Boulder to New York City to launch their first cohort. So that was almost like that was an acceleration just even in relationship building, which is really what I wanted to use it for. I wanted to kind of introduce ourselves to that sort of New York City tech ecosystem, which at that point was just starting to percolate. So that's really how I view Techstars for us. We needed to figure out obviously what we were building, but I also wanted to just meet like-minded individuals and see who we kind of gelled with. So it was massively successful for us in that regard. We were able to secure mentors as part of that program, and many of those mentors ended up becoming our early stage investors as well as advisors to the business. My biggest takeaway from that, which I always try to convey to any early stage entrepreneur I speak to, is date before you get married. It's true in all aspects of life, right? But use the opportunity, if you approach an investor, whether it's a VC or an angel, whomever they may be, and you say, hi, my name is so-and-so, nice to meet you, I'm raising money, you've done something wrong as a founder. You should always be building relationships, and particularly relationships well in advance, right? So this is something that I try to do with hiring, something I try to do with investors. It's building relationships before the actual transaction happens, right? Particularly in the case of fundraising, right? This is ideally someone who's going to be with you, right, for the long haul. And this is going to be a very important relationship, and you're going to have great conversations and you're going to have tough conversations, and there's going to be hard decisions that need to be made. So you need to know who you're dealing with on the other end, right? It's as much of an interview or dating process for you as a founder as it is for the investor.
You have your funding, you kind of get started, you've done the dating and now you've got married to that and then you're moving forward, getting the first few customers and clients using your service. That's also an initial thing to make that happen. Any tactics that work for you that you can share?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll state that it's a hustle, right? A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into it. And particularly for us, right? When we were starting out and starting to have conversations with owners and fee managers in New York City, I mean, New York City, it's a tough racket, right? The New York City real estate community, it's very close knit. And we didn't come from that world, right? So we were sort of outsiders trying to get in. Um, and I think we did a great job with that. And I think the reason why was because we first of all, we were empathetic, right? We listened. We didn't try to tell people what we thought their problems were. We spent a lot of time with a core group of early customers. We shadowed them. We spoke to them as frequently as we could, and really tried to understand what their pain points were and help them solve for that, right? And I'd say, in working in that way, and frankly providing that great experience early on, we also leveraged those folks and said, hey, listen, if you have other folks in your network who you think would benefit from this, or who you think we should be speaking to, please introduce us. We made it very easy for those introductions to happen, whether it was forwardable emails or anything else. But for every interaction I had with an owner, I tried to get five more introductions, right? And really expand our network that way.
The root problem, improving the leasing experience, hasn't changed. But talk to me, how did they come to that realization, and how did you make that shift?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So 2 years in, so this was after Techstars, we had raised a little bit of friends and family money. We were, again, listening, right? So we initially built a B2C product. It was renter facing, so it would help renters kind of clip or bookmark listings that they found everywhere, organize it, and ideally make a better decision on where to live faster. So we did that. We were building that. And we learned from users where it was like, hey, this information I'm clipping from all these sites, it's wrong. It's inaccurate. The apartment was rented weeks ago. I'm having all of this pain. Can you solve for that? So that was sort of like that moment where we're like, we can't solve for that based on the current iteration of the product or what we're building, but let's find out why that exists. Then we went to sort of the other side, right? The businesses. And we said, hey, we're getting a lot of complaints about X, Y, and Z. How are you running this process now? And after a series of conversations and hearing, well, I use spreadsheets and people, or I use accounting software and people, or I use 10 different systems and people, that was the light bulb moment where we said, this has been solved for in other industries. It will be solved for. It's just a matter of when. And we felt like we were equipped to solve that problem. So that's how we pivoted from B2C to B2B, to say, okay, well, let's deliver technology to these folks, because it's not that they don't want to provide a great apartment leasing experience. It's that they don't have the technology to do so. So let's build that technology for them.
Scaling. How do you go from just a few clients, few customers on it, and then to tens, hundreds, and more? What tactics that have you found that have worked?
It's a great question. Yeah. So I'd say, that's a tale as old as time as far as challenges go, right? I think focus is something that we probably didn't do all that well. And that's on me, right? In the beginning, because you wanted to try to figure out where you had that fit. And then I think as we've grown and as we've matured as an organization, right? We've learned where that kind of sweet spot was, right? So when you ask me, right, like the right type of customer, we are focused on a very particular type of customer, particular unit size. And we've been able to really kind of whittle that down to understand, okay, who is the right customer for us? And then how do we approach them, and how do we sell into them? How do we have those conversations? That took time, right? To really figure out. It was a lot of, pardon my French, throwing shit against the wall and trying to figure out what would stick, right? But once you figure that out, having that laser focus and being very surgical is very, very important. And I think we've figured that out over time, right? And not trying to be all things to all people, and getting comfortable saying no when it's not the right fit.